Hey, happy Friday. It's time for another art stream. It's good to be here again. Today I'm going to be working on my iPad. I just got this new drawing stand as a Christmas gift from my mom. Thank you, Mom. And I really love the way that the iPad is displayed on this. It gives you a nice place to like rest your hand. It makes the iPad feel bigger. I have an iPad Air, so it's already a fairly decent size. Not quite as big as the largest iPad Pro, but it's still a large tablet. And normally I have it in this protective foldy case, which works great a lot of the time. And if I'm traveling, it's perfect. But for today, in my studio, having a nice desk kind of thing to draw on, it's great. So thanks to Aaron Blaze for recommending this through his own work and live streams. I don't know if I have the same exact version that he has, but the idea of having the stand like this is great. I had another one that was kind of just a wire metal mesh, and it just wasn't as great. So this is much more spacious and roomy. It's got a nice place to put my pencil. It's got a cutout for the plug so that everything rests comfortably in here. So it's really great. So feel free to chat in the chat box. Let me know that you're here. And I'm happy to converse with you wherever you're at. And you can ask me questions while I paint. But I'm just going to go ahead and dive in and we can get started. Looking forward to doing some painting today. I'll try to talk fairly consistently throughout so that it's a little more interactive. But there will be times when I just zone out into the art so much. So if you want me to talk more, make sure that you're chatting in that chat box so that I know you're there and I know you're paying attention or interested in what's going on. I already have a base sketch down for the Otter, as you can see. I've got my screen shared in addition to the camera that I have. And so anyway, you can see exactly what I'm doing as I'm doing it, but you can also see that I'm actually drawing on the screen. It's not just, some sort of AI thing. I hate AI. Anyway, here we go. I'm going to go ahead and start roughing in some rough colors and paint. Let's see. Add a layer. I'm going to lower it beneath that one. And we'll start putting in some rough color here. So the resource I'm using, the reference is from a photo taken by the very talented Dustin Blaze, great photographer. And let's see, I kind of like the colors the way they are, so I might stick with those. I don't have a whole lot of pieces that have this warm tone background, and so let's try to see if we can match it to some extent here. Go for kind of a warm orange and yellow. Kind of somewhat saturated. And then change this from sketching to, why don't we do oil today? I haven't used the oil in a while. Rough oil might be nice. Knife, oil tube. Let's do heavy oil smooth or heavy oil. Bold oil soft. We'll do the soft. This is one of my favorite oil brushes from the set. Come in here, shrink this down just a little bit so I can see the whole canvas. And I could very easily just fill in the background. In fact, if you don't know how to use Procreate, I can show you how to do it really quick. If you just tap the circle color here and drag it and let go, it will instantly fill it with the max color saturation of that color. So if you're trying to just get a nice flat image filled in, you could just drag and drop the color and it instantly fills. To undo that, you take 2 fingers and you tap and it gets rid of it. Now I want to make sure that I didn't pick the wrong color here. Yeah, I must have bumped it, so let's try this again. I just like the overall texture that I get when I paint it myself versus the flat fill. It gives it a more natural feeling. So even if this takes a little longer, I mean, part of the fun of painting is actually painting, right? So fill in this warm color here. Keep a little bit of that texture in there. I don't want to overdo it. Okay. You can see that the color and the hue slightly change the more I paint, which it's also a nice feature in this brush set. If you're curious as to where I got these brushes, these are Max Ulichney's Max Packs. And so if you go to maxpacks.com, maxpacks.com, you can see the spelling on the screen here, Max Pack. There's a whole variety of brush packs that you can get. There's comics, watercolor, retro, painter, gouache, oil, essential, and they come with a huge variety of brushes that you can use, and they give a very natural feel. It's like using traditional media, which is one of the main reasons I really love these Max Packs, and it draws me back into using Procreate more often in the first place. Alright, so I got that background in. I'm gonna find some of these other colors just to kind of enhance the scene. So let's see, I'll go a little cooler and drop it down a little bit more. Okay, and we'll go and fill it. Well, actually that's warmer, isn't it? Cooler would be this way. Come down here and move toward the gray. Still want some color. And then I'll just paint right along the top here. So, and you'll notice that these brushes are good at blending with one another so that they feel, like I said before, like traditional media. And as I'm painting this in, I'm thinking about the direction of the brush, what way I want the curves to go. There's a lot of rippling effect in the water in the image that I'm using, and so I want to make sure that I'm kind of mimicking that with the direction of the brush strokes I'm taking. And the more I lay it down, the thicker it gets, because it's like I'm putting more and more layers of paint onto the canvas. And this is just a rough pass, so as I move along, I'll be enhancing some of these details some of the colors are going to ultimately get switched around. But for now, it's a good placeholder color. And we got just a little bit of that up here in the front. And then we got some more down this way, just little here and there. Once again, thinking about those directional brush strokes. Some of these areas are going to be lighter, some of them are going to be darker. It just depends on which way the ripple is moving. I'll go ahead and darken up some of the area where the head of the otter is and his reflection. Okay. And do the same up here. Thinking about the direction of the face, the direction of the fur. Thinking about which areas get a little darker. And I think that's probably the most important thing for me when I'm painting, is thinking about the tone and value. That's the thing that really separates my work from when I'm doing something kind of loose and sketchy and cartoony versus when I want it to look more realistic. The realism really comes in with the way I convey light and value, for sure. Let's see, so that's kind of in range with that. It's kind of ripply over here. And just a little bit of darkness through some of that. Okay. I know it's not looking like a whole lot right now, but as I continue, it's really going to start to shift into something that looks right. I think now it's time for some of the blues. So we'll go into the cool area. And let's see, we've got a lot of these cool blues that are going to be around this range. Maybe a little brighter and lighter. That. And I'm going to lower my brush size just a little bit. And we'll start painting. Some of that. And notice at this stage, I'm not really focused on layers so much. This is all in the same layer. If we take a look here, I have my sketch layer on its own layer, so I can still see it when I paint. And then everything else is on this base layer beneath the sketch. So sometimes it's really easy to get caught up in using a crazy number of layers, but I find I do some of my best painting when I keep the layers really limited. fill this in. Got some blue coming up over here. And it kind of swirls up and over. The other important thing for me to keep in mind is that my drawing, my painting, no matter how much I do, is never going to be 100% exact as my photo. And so rather than trying to make the impossible happen, not that I'm aiming to do it in the first place, but just knowing that I'll never be able to 100% without flaw recreate that image gives me a little bit of freedom. So it's like, okay, so what do I want to do to it to make it my own? How do I separate it? Maybe it's some color and tone shifting. Maybe it's just adding some extra detail. Maybe it's adding a story element to the image. You know, lots of different ways I can go to test that out and see what happens. But alright, so we're starting to see portions of this come together. What I'll do now is I'll start adding in some of the darker values of the browns. So we'll go back to this brown in particular, and I'll shift it a little cooler and a little darker. Okay. And I'll change the size of my brush, shrink it down a bit. And I'm not going to zoom in just yet until I have more of the basic details filled in. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to carve out some of the details that I think are going to be important. So like the back edge of that eye to help the eye stand out, the back edge of the nose, right? Some of these important markers that guide the shape and the form. Oh, thank you. Hey! Thanks for being here, AQV. Just painting in Procreate today. Talking about my process. What's up? I'm using Procreate on my iPad. It's an iPad Air. One of the newest models. I don't know if it's the newest. If they came out with one this year, then it's not the newest, but the one behind that. So, painting an otter, in case we're wondering. Although I think it says it in the title. And I'm using Max Ulichney's Max Packs. This one in particular that I'm using at the moment is the Oil Max Pack. Yeah, it's an otter. A river otter. So right now, at this stage, I'm basically just putting in the basic value details. And then I'll go in after I've got all the structure down, and I'll start doing some more refining details on the face and the hair to make it look more realistic. I like to go for a realistic style where you can still tell it's a painting. I don't like to do 100% photorealistic, but if you look at my other videos, you can see other stuff that I've painted and drawn that's got that same kind of style I'm talking about. Let's do a little bit of darkening up here. Oh, thank you. Thank you all for being here. This is great. It's better than just talking to myself. For sure. I saw that you were doing something else before you rated me, so what were you drawing or painting or doing? Yeah, I appreciate the raid and the follows and the likes and stuff. It's all great. I was gonna do a long art stream, but the internet is doo-doo. I hear that. I don't know why. Sometimes my stream will just like not work because of the internet. But today, it seems to be going all right. Oh, well, actually, if you look over there, I've got an oil painting in process of a rhino. I was working on it in one of my recent live streams. And I've got other oil paintings in process around my studio. There's a little bit of a delay, so I'm trying to see what you're seeing before I move my camera around. Yeah, I've got different stuff in process on the walls, and then I have other digital paintings and sketches and stuff on this wall here. The gorilla is a digital painting I did in Photoshop. Sorry if the camera's crooked. And then a bunch of the ink drawings on the wall are from Inktober this year. Alright, trying to get a more accurate view of myself again. Hopefully this is the right angle. Can you still see? Maybe down a little more. Oh, thanks. I just cleaned up yesterday. It's still not perfect, but it's better than it was for sure. Trying to make sure I get the values in the right areas here. I can always correct later, but it's better if I get them right the first time. And a lot of this is just thinking about the direction of the water. Painting using the same kind of curves and lines. It really helps the forms of the shape feel accurate. And so even if you get a little loose with your strokes and you take some liberties, if the overall feeling of the painting is still on track, then it won't matter if it's a little off or a little different. I've been running my YouTube channel for about a year, a little over a year now, and I had some highs and lows with it. You know, sometimes I get like 50 followers really quick, and then other times it's like I'll get a week where I get 1 and I'm happy. So I try. So hopefully this is starting to look more like an otter now, right? You can see the values shifting and changing, adding some contrast. Well, I'm glad you feel tall, especially if you're not used to feeling tall. Yeah, I hope I'm not missing any comments. Let me scroll back through. I don't want to miss out on something somebody's saying. Awesome. I think I got them all. Yeah, thanks. So it's getting there. I still need to add some highlights now to help it pop even more. So there'll be the highlights in the water and the highlights on the face and then the highlights on the ripples. So let's do the face first. The face is going to be kind of similar to the background color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sample that. And then I'm just going to brighten it up. So I'm going to go brighter and a little more saturated with the color. Maybe a little warmer. And we'll test it out and see if this looks right. And I'm still keeping this on just one layer, just so you know, in case you do digital painting on your own. For me, I find that when I start adding way too many layers, my painting starts to get all muddled and confusing. And then if I want to make an edit, it gets really hard because I don't remember what was on what layer. By keeping it all on one, I'm forcing myself to think more traditionally, so that if I was doing an actual like oil painting, I would be doing something similar at this stage. The colors, the benefit here is that the colors are not wet, so I don't have to wait for it to dry to add stuff in, but you can still see when I add brush strokes that it has a bit of that blending capability where the colors are still grabbing each other and becoming new colors, but the more I lay down that new color, the more it becomes original and not the blend. Yeah, I don't do everything always on one layer. You're going to see me add more layers later, but I think having a strategy in terms of how you're going about adding the layers, like what's the purpose of that layer? What is it specifically doing? And as long as it's not a task that's too minuscule, Like, if I'm just adding a little highlight over the brow, I can put that on the same layer that I have everything else, most of the time. I don't need to make a whole layer just for that one little detail. But if I'm adding maybe like a whole shadow pass to the image where I really want to accentuate the shadows of the painting, I might make a multiply layer to do that, right? So there's got to be a reason why I'm adding the layer in the first place. So this is the highlight color for the face, and I'm going to keep the brush on the small side. Might be a little too bright, but that's okay. You can see how some of these colors are still grabbing. The one thing I do have on its own layer is the sketch layer. If I turn that off, well, you know what? We don't really need it at this point, do we? It's not adding a whole lot to the image. So I might just keep it off from now on. It depends on how far along in the painting I am. That sketch layer is really important for helping me establish where things belong. Okay, let's see here. I'm gonna just massage these colors into the painting. Help them feel a little less separate. Just lightly moving the brush. Okay. And what I might do is I might go a little bit more toward the orangey red and just add some contrasting color in there too. Just here and there. Okay. All right. Let's do a little bit on the eye. Well, that's a little bright. I'll probably go back over it with a dark. Something like that. Trying to look at my reference and see. I'll probably fix a lot of the eye when I go in for the extra sharp details. I'll go back over some of this with the darker strokes to help get some of those wet fur separators in there. So when I want it to blend more, I keep the brush down, and when I want it to be a little more separate, I kind of like dab the brush, because it acts like it has more paint on it when I dab versus when I continue to keep it down and lightly smudge. And adding these points of contrast really helps develop the form too, where you've got these really bright lights versus the really dark shadows. It'll make the shadow look like it's black, even though the color isn't black. And so I don't tend to use the color black very often. I'll use it when I'm sketching, but I'm not going to use it often as a paint color because most things in the world around us are not actually black. They are maybe a dark brown or a dark blue. It's really more of just the lack of light that's making the image before us look black. So, like there. Maybe on the front a little more. Okay. Get a little more of that shadow up in here. And then we'll pull in more of it in this area. Just little by little, making decisions with the brush. Okay. And then playing around with some of these shadow areas. And because this brush is so good at blending, I really don't have to change it all that often to a different brush. I can get hard edges, I can get soft edges, it all works. Forgive me, I get like really into the painting. Sometimes I forget to talk. If you have questions about anything, feel free to ask, or if you just want to talk about something in particular, that's fine too. Oh yeah, absolutely. I game too, so I've been really getting into Marvel Rivals recently. I've been enjoying that. I used to play Overwatch a lot before it got ruined. Oh yeah, I've been gaming most of my life. Since the Nintendo and the Sega Genesis and Game Boy Pocket. Oh yeah, they ruined it before they even had Overwatch 2. They started to shift things in the wrong direction, and I was hoping Overwatch 2 which they had originally promised would be, its own game. I was hoping that they'd fix a lot of those problems, but instead they just kind of updated Overwatch 1, called it Overwatch 2, and forced everybody to play that version. And now everything's microtransactions, and I don't like it. Oh wow. Let me see. Yeah, they merged it. Oh, yeah. I agree. Once he left, it really fell apart. I can't remember what his name was. Let's go a little more toward the red again, and we'll go maybe like a soft reddish brown, and I'm gonna increase the brush size just a little bit, just lightly put some of this in here. Okay, and then we'll get some of it down here. I might do a glazing effect down at the bottom to help it feel a little more reflective. All right, back to the chat. Let's see. Yeah, I saw that they brought the 6v6 back. I think they were worried about Rivals, and Rivals to me just feels way more balanced because no character in particular feels weak. Every one of them has their own strength, and if you know how to use the character well, you can be the most, devastating force on the field versus people who don't know how to play their characters well. Or if you have the right combination of characters together. I really like the boosts that you get from the powers. My friends and I like to play, and we've found pretty good combos of which characters to play as, based on our own preferences and ability to understand how the character plays, as well as like which ones do we like to pair together. There's usually 5 of us, and so we need a 6th player that gets randomly put into our group. And I'm the flex guy, so if that person who goes in is a damage character, then I'll go healer, and vice versa. Let me see. Singapore servers, yeah. 1090, 10% when you get... Yeah. That's true. And usually they're the damage person. Although sometimes they're the healer, and they don't use them as a healer, they use them as a damage. It's like, but your character's supposed to be healing. It is definitely easier because you get to make those call-outs, right? Like, it's much easier to say, hey, can you give me a heal real quick, than trying to get a random stranger to do it. But yeah, that's how I spend time with my friends. I live in a different state than my friends. I moved, so it's the best way I have to connect with them. Yeah, I'll definitely do a glaze down at in the reflection there to make it a little better. Let's see, what can I blend? Maybe something. Maybe something here, a little smaller, and just kind of feather it in. Something like that. Alright, let's get some highlights on the water. So we're going to aim for the lighter blue. Let's see how this looks. We'll keep the brush kind of small. Yeah, I think that's got enough contrast. That's what it's all about. It's all about contrast. And then we'll add some over here. front. A little bit on the ear. A little bit on the cheek. Some of that's a little too strong, so we'll have to blend it. Thanks. I mean, some of it is just having done it enough to know how to do it, but a lot of it is also the quality of the brushes that I'm using. I can't recommend Max Ulichney's brushes highly enough if you have Procreate. Okay, so I feel like I've got a lot of the rough down at this point, so maybe just a couple more details here. Just to get some more interesting light on the scene. And then after I get that down, we'll go ahead and start doing some finer details. Yeah, I'm on an iPad. You can see it here. on my other camera. I'm trying out my new stand for my iPad. I just got it for Christmas. My mommy gave it to me. But I love it. It's great. First time using it. It makes the space feel more comfortable compared to just having it in my lap or in my hand or flat on a table. It's nice. I have a drawing monitor too that I'll do like Clip Studio paint work in, but the iPad has my favorite brushes, so. Well, thank you. I really like it too. If you're wondering the brand, it's called how do you say it? Eletiuo? I'll type it. E-L... E-T-I-U-O. Yeah, it makes the iPad feel more like a drawing monitor and not just a tablet. So that's why I like it. Okay, let's do... Alright, maybe we'll zoom in on the face. You can see how rough this actually looks zoomed in. I mean, it's not bad. I like the painterly feel, but it's not where it needs to be yet, is what I'll say. So I'll grab the darker color here, or maybe here. And I'll keep my brush size small, maybe go a little smaller. And this is where I'll add a layer. So everything I do from here out will probably be on this next layer unless I do a shadow layer. So let's see. I want to make sure I get the eye in the right place. And right now I think it's close, but maybe not 100%. I think the front of the eye needs to be more forward. And the brush could actually be a little smaller, I think, too. And then it goes up on an angle. And we got some shadow on this side of the eye. Don't want to overdo it, but it is there. Kind of feather it a little bit so that it feels like we've got hair around the eye. And then just get a little bit of that front and round this back. I don't want it to feel like it's slanting. It's really more like that to a degree. And then we've got the nose. Transition there. And let's see. We got more shadow up top here. So after the edge of this brow, darkening there, and a little dark on this corner of the face, like that. At first, these details aren't going to look all that great, but when they start compounding, they'll start to really feel like they belong. Especially when I add highlights and shadows. I just did a post recently on Instagram where I talk about like how every painting starts off with an ugly duckling stage. You just have to kind of keep wrestling with it until it gets to that nice finalized look. That's something that you can be proud of. But we have to be willing to wrestle in order to get that perfect piece. Because doesn't usually just spill out of your brush. It's something that you have to keep working at. I mean, even with this painting, like when I first started painting it, you guys asked if it was a snake. So, it wasn't quite reading Otter when I first started. Just gotta push through. Figure out what's working, what's not. Is it a shape? Is it a value? Is it the angle of something? This transition a little better. Let's zoom out a bit. See how it's looking. It's looking okay. Let me see. Yeah, zooming is kind of a double-edged sword, because when you zoom in and you work on a detail so much, it's like, oh yeah, that's looking great. But then when you zoom back out, it may not give the same feel. And so I don't think there's anything wrong with zooming. I just think that you need to be able to go back out every so often. Don't let yourself get so zoomed in for so long that you allow those kind of distortions to happen. So always check. And even doing something like this, where you're super zoomed out, to get a feel for, how is this reading? Does it look like the image that I'm trying to paint? Right? Am I still on the right track? Is something definitely wrong with it that isn't working? Be willing to ask yourself those kinds of questions. Some people aren't, and that's why they don't grow. You know, they think, oh, if I can't draw it the first time, that first, 10 minutes I put into it, then it's not worth it. But any art piece that you want to be successful needs time. And you might be painting something that's beyond your current skill set, and that's how you grow. You know, some people look at that as like a bad thing, but actually, painting beyond what you know is how you learn what you don't know, if that makes sense. You generally can't know that you don't know something until you try to paint it and realize you're not there. So what do? You take that knowledge and you apply it to the next painting, right? What did we learn? I learned that I need to take more time when I'm, working on my shadow layers to get the shadows to look just right. Maybe my details are a little sloppy. Okay, well, maybe I need to take more time with the detail layer and zoom out more when I'm adding that in. Maybe that's the lesson I learned. I'm saying this hypothetically, not that that's what I'm learning this particular lesson. If anything, for me, it's that, something that I've learned and I'm putting into practice is that less layers is better. The less layers you use, or the fewer layers that you use, the better your painting will be for it. Layers don't solve your painting shortcomings. I think some people treat layers like they're a cure-all, and then they don't realize that they're making more problems by using more layers. Something else I've learned is that problems are relative. So where you may look at a painting and say, oh my gosh, that is awful, I really need to fix that. Someone else may look at it and say, oh, what a beautiful piece. And something that you're really, really proud of, that you've worked really hard on, you may say, oh my gosh, this is the best painting I've ever done. I'm so happy with how it came out. And likewise, someone could come along and say, oh, that's terrible. It's all relative. Just remember why you're painting. Are you painting because it's something you enjoy doing? Are you painting because you want to make a career out of it? If you know why you're painting, it affects how you paint. If you're just painting for yourself and for fun, it shouldn't matter what other people think, because you're doing it for you. If you're doing it for a job or a career, then other people's opinions do have an impact, even if one person's is not the end-all be-all. People in general should like what you do, because if they don't, if you're finding a hard time getting people to like what you've created, then you're just not where you need to be yet. It doesn't mean you can't ever get there. But a career will be harder to come by if your skills aren't where they need to be at that moment. Yes, practicing a lot is the only way that you get better. Practicing the things that make you uncomfortable is how you really improve. So, a tip I have for you in that case, if that's where you struggle, is... Oh, something's wrong with my YouTube. Hold on. Let me see. I'll have to try and fix that. I don't know how to fix it. This is one of those internet problems, right? Does my stream look okay to you on Twitch? Oh, thank you, AQV. Okay, great. Yeah, YouTube, for whatever reason, is telling me that my stream isn't working right. So, as long as it looks good for you guys, that's all that matters. Because I could always download this from Twitch and upload it onto YouTube for a better video later. I'm still being pretty loose, even though this is more of a detail stage here. Any mistake I make, I can always paint over. Shadow there. More of that on that side. And a little bit of a darker edge on the front. Some darker lines going through the water. I mean, in the end, it's just a lot of lines and a lot of layering and blending. I mean, you saw where this started from, so there's no magic button I press. It's just thinking about what colors go where, how the blending works together. I might start moving on to some of the background now and then move back into the face again. So this is where I'll use another layer here, is added to the top, and we'll put this underneath that. And let's see. I might go for more of a glaze, so I'm gonna grab some of the brighter colors here. Maybe like that. And change the brush to a glaze if I have one. I think I have one. Dry oil, canvas. Could be a thin or a shader, maybe a wash. I thought I had a glaze. Okay, so let's do the wash. we'll see how this goes. I don't know if it's going to look good or not. I think that's all right. The trick will be just blending this together again, making it feel unified. Hi, Luco. Oh, you're about to play Marvel Rivals? We were just talking about that a little bit ago. Well, I guess you're welcome for saving you from yourself. Some more of this in there. Just a little bit. I want to not overdo it. And soften some of that. Just a little bit up there, and a tiny bit on the ear. Maybe go in a little smaller. Leaning more toward, which color did we use before? Was it kind of like, I think it's a little more red. Something like that, I think. Let's try this. Might be a little too saturated. I can always add another color in to kind of soften it again. It's probably a little too strong. We'll go a little more soft and gray. Enlarge the brush. And just slightly pat over some of these areas. The ear area definitely needs more cleanup. It's not a bad touch right there. Okay, and then a little more down here. Mary Grimbo. How have I been? I've been good. You've been trying to draw armor. Okay. Oh, my mic is quiet? I'm sorry. I'll move it. Hopefully that's a little better. I could also increase the volume on here. How's that? Is that better? I just don't want it to be like all crackly and stuff. I think I have the right mic plugged in. Should be the right one. Let me see. Properties. Yeah, that's the right one. Hopefully that fixes it. Oh, cool. Good, good, good. Alright, let's see. So what's happening in the reference is that the face is kind of like getting distorted in the reflection. And so trying to pull more of that distortion look in here. It's coming along, little by little. We'll go with a big brush and we'll just slightly grab some of that just to lighten it up a tad. Oh, too light. That's good, I think. All right. Gonna grab some other colors in here too. We'll grab the green that I see. It's kind of a yellowy green. Something along there, I think. And just to add more color into the image in general. The color in the water hints at the background that we can't see. So it just kind of helps break up the monotony of the yellows and oranges. Might have gone a little too far there. That's alright, I can fix it later. Let's do brownish red. Maybe a little more red. That's better. A little more up here. Somehow my Epidemic Sound playlist has veered off in a very different direction than what I originally picked. I think it's confused. What did I apologize for? I don't remember. I got so into the painting, I don't remember why I said sorry. Was it for my playlist? It might have been. I don't like that last section of glaze as much. I'll keep it off the Otter. Oh, for choosing the wrong color? Yeah. Let's see. Gonna go. Actually, let's go back to the dark. Let's do the dark blue. It's gonna be more gray. Probably a little warmer. Saturated. Down. There. Somewhere around here, maybe? Alright, let's see how this goes. Oh, well, I mean, you could describe it if you like. Arthur from Ghosts and Goblins. I haven't heard of that. Is that something new, or is it an old thing? Oh, okay. Um, do I already follow you on social media? I can't remember. Because if you post something on there, I could look at it real quick. YouTube, Instagram, Twitter. I don't, but I could take a minute to look at it. Let me see. Oh, I don't know if it'll let me. I don't think it'll let me search if I'm not a member. Oh, I can search. Okay. Are you on any other social media? Lucolino Arts. Maybe I can, let me see. Alright. Find your profile. Oh, no, I didn't. That's the wrong thing. I found your Instagram. Alright, let me see. Arts dot blue sky dot social. Site cannot be reached. It won't let me. Oh well. I found you and followed you on Instagram, so if you post it there, I can give you some feedback. Yeah, it won't let me see your Blue Sky page. Do you have it set to like private? I'll keep painting while you figure it out. I think Instagram will let you. That should be all right. All right, let me paint a little bit more. I'm falling off. Grab that. And I'll do a smaller brush. Grab some of the lighter colors in there. Oh, no, not like that. That's gonna look weird. Let's do this layer. Maybe a little brighter and more saturated. Get that reflected light feel. A little here, a little there. Along the ear. A little up in this area. And then some along this way. It's a little too much. That's better. And then here's where I'll do another layer, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to lower the opacity, cut it down by about half, keep the same color, and this helps it to feel more like a reflection. So now it's looking more reflective there. Oh, thank you, Lilypad. I love the pun. Alright. I'll take a look at that. Let me see. Ooh, okay. I really like the first one. The silhouette is really interesting. I think something that I would adjust is let me see. Maybe the angle of the back arm, the uppermost arm, because if I'm thinking about it from a three-dimensional perspective, that arm is really placed more on top of the shoulder than part of the shoulder joint. Yeah, so the one that's behind the helmet, it's the way it's positioned right now. If I was to imagine this as like a 3D object, that arm is a little too high up. It should be lowered just a bit. I like the pose of the arm. It's the placement. I think everything else about the arm is fine, but the placement of where it is a little off. But I like the silhouette that you have, especially the front-facing arm that's angled down lower. I like that you've included in the silhouette the little gaps between the leg and the forearm and between the fingers. That helps the silhouette to stand out so that we can tell what that shape is. So that's good. And I think the angles of everything else are fine as well. Okay. Looking closer at it. Let me see. So sometimes you can get away with exaggeration. The one area I would be concerned about here in terms of the abdomen to hips, I think the hips are placed fine, but the abdomen itself is angled just a little too far back. It's almost like the belly button would be on the hip, right? If I'm following that line through the shape where the belly button would be placed, you can have it angled, right? You can have a twist, but it might even help if you did it yourself. Like if you stood up and tried to twist your body, like how far at your most twist does your belly button go in relation to like where your pant button would be, right? Because that's what you have here with the belt. Like how far can that belly button actually go in relation to the belt loop? And you can still exaggerate, but if it's too far, then it feels almost like an action figure that you've twisted so far that the torso is like sticking out awkwardly from the hips. So those would be my two critiques. It would be the abdomen and the uppermost arm. Perhaps I think it's a abdomen thing. So if you were to shift the abdomen slightly more toward camera, so that we could still see the line that goes from the neck down to the belt line, that goes through the belly button, if we could still see that area, the mid of the torso, I think it would be a little more believable. In terms of the line work and quality, I think the lines are working well. Everything's reading clearly. It's just the placement of those couple things that's a little off. Looking at the other images, I think the character holding the hat in the background looks good. You've got kind of an exaggerated play on the upper arms. Maybe tone it down just a tiny bit, because even at exaggerated, it still feels slightly disproportionate. I know that you're probably basing this off of other characters that already exist. You said they're part of a Capcom game, and maybe they're styled that way, in which case you can completely disregard my feedback. But I think maybe just scaling back the exaggeration in the upper arms and shoulders just a tiny bit would help sell it a little more. In terms of the other character in the front who's holding their leg up near their face, I feel like they're in balance. It's hard to tell without seeing the foot, but I think given the hips, it still looks in balance. You've got a much more solid through line in that character in terms of their torso, compared to the knight, who's twisted a little too far. I think this character is in proper curve. You've got a nice C curve to the form. I think maybe the hip of that character needs to be altered a bit. You've got the thigh pulled so far forward that it almost looks like the leg is dislocated. So I would tone that back just a little bit. I mean, what might help is to draw through the form. And so if you were thinking about the thigh as a cylinder and not just a line, that might help you to better align the hips. I think the front hip is mostly okay. It's facing completely out, though, toward camera. And while it is technically possible to do that, with the stretch that you have on the other leg, I don't think it would be possible. So maybe something angled a little more, instead of right at camera, maybe angled away from camera, facing front. Does that make sense? And I think the foot's almost there. What might help is some defined edges around the ball underneath the toes. If you get more of an angle that way, to kind of show that there's some distance between the front ball of the foot and where the heel is, because I think where you have it, it's supposed to be kind of like leaning toward the camera, right? But the way it's drawn right now, it looks flat. And if that's a flat foot, it's kind of squinched a little too much. So using some contour lines to help separate the shapes, I think would really help it to look more three-dimensional. Yeah. More studies than anything. Yeah, okay, that's fair enough. I guess some of my comments are really more for the original artist then. In terms of the line quality, I think the quality of your lines is nice. You've got, solid decision making in there. They definitely look like they're characters. So all that kind of stuff, I think, is working for you. Yeah. Hopefully that helps. All right. All right, back to the otter. Let's get some more highlights in here. So, gonna go to. Actually, I don't need another layer yet. I can use the same layer. I'll just change the brush. Hiccup. Change the brush. Let's do. What if I did bold oil? Let's see how that looks. We'll grab the blue and we'll lighten it just a little bit. This direction and maybe up here, maybe even more so. And we'll shrink the brush size down and we'll start layering in some of these. Ooh, it's got to go smaller. Okay. Okay. So let's try it. We'll do sketching. Okay. So if we're thinking of the abdomen the way you have it right now, right? You've got your shoulder and you got your chest kind of doing this thing. And the way it is right now, you have the chest, you know, this is the middle line, but then it kind of trails off here, right? It kind of goes like off the model, where it really should be a solid line through, so that the belly button, if we were to imagine it beneath the armor plate, would be somewhere over there, right? Even so, I would angle it maybe considering your... I know this isn't going to be accurate because I'm just kind of freehanding it, right? But I would say maybe like angle it even more this way. Like we can exaggerate. And have it maybe come more this way. And then if we wanted to... Well, hang on. Forget that. Let's try again. So let's think for a minute. I think it really might actually need to be, if your hips, because the hips are the driving force, right? The hips are the driving force, and you have the belt of the hips kind of facing this direction and angling up this way. And you have one leg coming forward, right? We'll think of that as like a cylinder. So we have one leg coming forward in this direction. We got our hips. And then you have another leg going backward. Right? So we think about the joint, we think about the bottom, and the legs kind of going off in this direction like that. So if I'm thinking about the chest, the most I could twist it would be maybe like I could go down, or I could twist it back, and that's going to affect it in different ways, right? But the most I could twist the shoulders in kind of a contrapposta way. I could have a shoulder here, and I could have a shoulder there. Maybe kind of like up. Like you have it. It's just the particulars about it that are a little off. So depending on which way I'm leaning will showcase which one's in front. So according to your image, this is the front shoulder. you've got your arm coming down this way, right? And the forearm doing this kind of a thing, and you got your hand roughly down there, which would mean that the back shoulder is somewhere over here, and we could draw where that socket would be for that arm, and we could tilt it up like this and have it go, you know, kind of in that direction. And you could foreshorten it if you wanted to make it look like it's farther away. We've got the head. The head could be leaning forward, but we always want to think about where the neck is, right? So the head can tilt backward, forward. It could even like be angled down even more, right? It could even be like overlapping this shoulder here. But the chest is going to be in a fixed position somewhere between all these things. So if it's twisted back, it's going to eventually twist back down this way. It won't go over here, right? So we could have the chest doing this kind of a thing where it's kind of like up and over and angled. Getting like a curve out of it. But it can't go like this, right? The belly button can't be like over here. That doesn't anatomically work. No, you're not derailing the live stream. It's fine. Hopefully that helps. I always try to think about it as like one solid unit. And so a lot of times it helps to move around yourself to practice and really feel what's happening with your body. Like how far can you actually stretch, barring any sort of like physical ailments that you might have or limitations, right? We don't want to like break our spine to see how far we can stretch. That would not be a good thing. It should always be within your comfort zone. There's also plenty of resources out there that have like models that have gone into dynamic poses that you could base your characters off of. In fact, I think that might be the most helpful thing for you to grow is if you want, because you like those characters, right? If you wanted to put them in poses that you're not seeing someone else have already drawn, then put that character into whatever position you see a model doing, right? You're basically just taking the idea of the pose you're looking at and superimposing, like, what if this character was in that pose? Yes, no breaking spines. Not on my stream. Alright, back to the bold. Oop. And grab that color. And let's see. What layer am I on? No, I'm on the right layer. I'd like it to be a little more bright. Maybe I do need a new layer. What happens when I do that? It's better. What did I do? Rested my hand on the wrong part. I need to trim some of that back. Might be a little too exaggerated. It's getting there. Anyway, going back to that tip that I was talking about where you kind of like try moving yourself and get a feel for how the body moves. That's a tip from when I was in animation school. If you ever do animation, you often become your own reference. So that's one of the big things that they stressed was not being afraid to kind of make yourself look silly to test things out. Alright, back to the lighter colors. Grab this, go brighter, brighter and lighter. Well, you don't have to record it for other people, but a lot of times you do. In like critiques and stuff. they want to see your reference, so everyone else gets to see you act silly, but they're doing the same thing, so it's not as embarrassing. I used to be a teacher, so I'm past the point of caring if I look silly. I don't think you can be a teacher and not be willing to make yourself look silly. That's just part of the job. I firmly believe that it's probably impossible to reach a student if you're not willing to be silly. I think back on all the teachers I had, and the ones that I remember the most and learned from the most were not afraid to look silly in front of the class. There's definitely something to that. A little better with that angle there. Even just the smallest changes sometimes make a big difference. What are we thinking so far? Is it looking all right? Good, good. Alright, I might do another highlight pass with an extra light blue. Whew. Alright, I might do some darker blues, and then we might be near the end. Maybe if I did a shadow layer there.
All right.
unless anybody sees anything like egregious, I think we might call this one done. What do we think, y'all? I'll give you a minute to look it over. Thank you, Luco. All right. I think I'm going to call this one done. This was a lot of fun today. Definitely enjoyed this in particular. So let me go ahead and grab, let's see. Not the turpentine, maybe the natural oil detail. And I'll sign this maybe in something kind of dark, like a dark blue. Put it maybe like in this area, perhaps. Let's see how big this is. Maybe right around there. Too big. Nope. Let me zoom in. Good enough. Thanks everybody for making this a great stream. Had more fun today than I've had in a while painting. So I appreciate you being here. Of course I can't walk away just yet. I have to smudge something. I'm not liking how some of these are going, so I'll just smudge them in the right direction. Okay. Alright, I can be happy with that. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for being here. Thanks for the conversation and the compliments and the questions and all that kind of stuff. Makes my art streaming a lot more fun. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye, everybody.